Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. And I think we're going to pack a whole lot of living into this episode. We are going to cover some of the news out of this week, and then we are going to transition into a collection of games that have released over the last few weeks. That list includes Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe, Metroid Prime Remastered, Theatrhythm Final Bar Line, and several other titles. Joining me for all of that is Game Informer's own Wesley LeBlanc. Wes, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Excited to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. We had to kind of throw an audible here, or call an audible here, because some stuff kind of happened with our recording plans. But you know what? I think we are going to have a better show than ever with this episode. I thought there wasn't a whole lot of news coming into this week, but it turns out there actually was a decent amount of news. Yeah. And we usually start off with Pokemon news when there is some Pokemon news, so we're going to do that real quick. February 27th. It's a special day for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's my birthday.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. And second of all, it's Pokemon Day, which means it is the anniversary of the series releasing for the first time in Japan, which is kind of a fitting thing, seeing as how Pokemon's one of my favorite franchises. But with that always comes a Pokemon Presents live stream. That means news and updates, which is good for me anyway, because on my birthday, that means I always get some kind of Pokemon announcements, which is always a little fun birthday treat for me. I actually was in I was doing a demo for Pokemon Sword and Shield. I think I've told this story before on this podcast, but it's been probably a year at this point. I was in a demo for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and they were like, all right, well, for some reason, the Switch wants you to enter your birthday. So I put February 27th. They're like, oh, clever, Pokemon Day. And then I was like, no, that's actually my birthday. They're like, what? Yeah, it was a funny little moment. So yeah, they announced that this year is going to be no different. Pokemon Company is going to have their own Pokemon Presents stream that will be taking place on Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific, which is 9 a.m. Eastern. And last year we got the announcement of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the Gen 7 Pokemon coming to Pokemon Go, and a content update for Pokemon Legends Arceus, as well as some other smaller announcements. What are your predictions for Pokemon Day 2023?
I have like big predictions, and I have what I think might actually happen. Swinging for the fences, I think we get Pokemon Let's Go Johto.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I
would love that.
Yeah, it would fill in this slot nicely, because now we're on kind of like a 3-year cycle with Pokemon games. Maybe we don't know how Legends is going to fit into that. I assume we're getting a sequel, but that could change things up. But it kind of seems like, we do a mainline entry, like a new gen, and then a remake, and somewhere in there's like another Pokemon title. And I feel like it's time for Let's Go Johto. It's something a lot of people have wanted. It makes sense. It's like that's what I want. That's the next Pokemon game I want to play. I'm not convinced that's happening necessarily, because Game Freak has been very, very busy lately. So what I actually think is going to happen is a big Scarlet and Violet update. I don't know if it's going to be DLC. I do think we will get DLC for these games eventually, but I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know if that's this announcement. Might be a little too early.
Just for context, the last time we did not get at least some kind of big update for a Pokemon game was 2015. There was nothing really, like no major content or game released in that year. 2016, we got Sun and Moon. 2017, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. 2018, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. 2019, Sword and Shield. 2020, we got the 2 Sword and Shield expansions. 2021, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and 2022, both Legends Arceus and Scarlet Violet. So it would be ruining a streak if we didn't at least get the content update, which is my prediction, honestly. It's the Scarlet Violet content update.
Yeah.
But then I have a smaller prediction as well. And that is the Pokemon games coming to Nintendo Switch Online. They've already said Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 are coming to Switch Online. So I would not be surprised if they were like, available today on Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. But what about some of the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games?
If we don't get those Monday, I will be severely disappointed. I feel very confident that an announcement of those games in some form is going to happen on Monday. I'm sure you watched the little 20-minute teaser that it came with, or 20-second teaser that they announced this news with, but they are using a very particular song, and it's not an orchestral version. It's a very retro Game Boy sounding song. It is the theme from Pokemon Red and Blue, and I mean, whenever like 2 weeks ago during the direct, when GB and GBA games were announced for Nintendo Switch Online, everyone was like, "This is awesome. Where's Pokemon?" And a lot
Yeah.
of people were like, it's around the corner, Pokemon Day. And Pokemon does like to hold their own little conferences, announcements, showcases for their own games. So like, if I had to bet anything is going to happen during this Pokemon Day, I think that these are a shoe in.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think both of those are two like very obvious choices for this. Like,
Yeah.
Sword and Shield kind of was the first game to get like actual like meaningful DLC, like in the form of like an expansion pass. And I would be very, very surprised if Scarlet and Violet did not get a similar treatment with that. And it would stand to reason that this is when they would announce that. Like, hey, coming this summer is the first pack, and then coming this holiday season is the second pack or second like content update. I also think that, kind of keeping in with like the trend of what they typically do. There's usually some sort of like forward facing thing. There's usually some sort of retro facing thing. And then there's usually like something unexpected or like a spin-off. And in past years, we've gotten like new Pokemon Snap. Do you think that we're going to get any spin-offs on this? Like, do you think like maybe we get like an update to like the Pokemon Stadium franchise?
I don't know if it'll be Pokemon Stadium. If I had to bet my money on anything, it would be the Mystery Dungeon series. There's been some background behind the scenes copyright trademark stuff happening, which is par for the course. Companies keep up with their trademarks and copyrights for obvious reasons, but sometimes stuff like that is like a tease, not a tease, but like is a hint towards maybe something is coming. And I forget the name of the company that leads the Mystery Dungeon series, but they just did some like back end copyright business stuff, and a lot of people are speculating perhaps that means a new Mystery Dungeon's on the way. Maybe it's a remaster or a remake of a fan favorite series or a new one. It's been a minute. What was it? Super Mystery Dungeon was the last new one we got, and that was I don't even know when, a while ago. So
you think of Spike Chunsoft?
Yes, yeah.
And then the last Mystery Dungeon was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX, which was a remake.
But there was Super right before that, and that was like a new entry.
Well, yeah, there was Super Mystery Dungeon in 2015.
Oh my gosh, 2015.
Yeah, it's been a minute, right?
Okay, yeah. So I think I want Let's Go Johto to be like the big surprise announcement of this showcase, but I wouldn't be more surprised if it's something like Mystery Dungeon.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably what we're going to get, right? It's some sort of Scarlet Violet update. Maybe Let's Go Johto. I think that's my long shot prediction for this.
Yeah.
I think that some sort of Pokemon game, aside from Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2, are going to come to Switch Online. I think it's going to be either Red, Blue, Yellow, because they've done that before. I think it was like, the 20th anniversary? They put Red, Blue, and 3DS. Yellow on the 3DS eShop. I think that either red, blue, yellow, or maybe Fire Red, Leaf Green. That would be the dream, right?
Gosh, see, I'm shooting. Maybe my head's way too high in the stars because I'm thinking red, blue, yellow, gold, silver, crystal, ruby, sapphire, and emerald. Maybe Fire Red and Leaf Green.
Wow, that would be ambitious. I feel like they wouldn't like ruin that all with one like big dump, right?
Yeah, that's true. But then where else? Unless they have plans to sell those separately, like because on 3DS you bought each one individually. Like I could see them doing maybe red, blue, and yellow on Nintendo Switch Online, and then maybe like Emerald or something on GBA Online, and then the rest you could buy piecemeal. That's really what I want. I just like let me buy these games on my Switch.
I feel like they're not going to do that. I think Nintendo would be averse to that. I think they want everybody to put their Game Boy Advance, Game Boy, what have you, on these subscription services because they really want to bolster those numbers, it seems like. They keep adding to it. Like they didn't... I think people wanted them to add Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. I'm certainly glad they did, but I don't think that they needed to. I think the N64 was a huge pull, especially once they fixed the emulation and added some more titles like GoldenEye. Like that was a big get for them. And they have Pokemon Stadium. They just put Mario Party on it. So it's the Nintendo Switch Online system or service has slowly gotten better and better. And I don't think they needed to add Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. But now that they have, I think that they would not like it if any of their, especially close exclusive partners, end up putting their games out that would otherwise be a good fit for that service as like kind of individual purchases.
That's fair for sure. Yeah. That would just be... If you put all those Pokemon games like GB and GBA era Pokemon games on Nintendo Switch Online, Like that's such a huge bolstering of forces. Like if I would pay like another $5 a month to have those. I don't want to
What are
do
you
that.
doing? Don't give
I
him
don't
any
want to do
ideas.
that. But I'm saying like that's such a huge bolstering of the catalog for me personally. I guess if you're not a Pokemon fan, who cares? But like, yeah, that'd be a huge deal. Gosh, if you threw in like some Ruby Sapphire Pinball, maybe some games
Yeah.
like that, that would be incredible. And is this a big anniversary? I can't remember for Pokemon Day.
No, it's
27
because
or something?
yeah,
Or
yeah,
okay, yeah.
it's because it came out in '96. I mean, the Japanese release date was '96, and in the
Yeah.
U.S. it is going to be 25 years. But they always celebrate the Japanese release, which they
Yeah,
should
yeah.
because it's the first time that the game came out. I know Game Informer, we typically celebrate the U.S. release because we provide coverage almost exclusively to the U.S.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I think that's a pretty good foreshadowing of what next week's episode is going to be focused on.
Yeah. I do think there's
Yeah.
also going to be like, there's always smaller announcements. So some mobile game updates, probably something with Go. And I wouldn't
Oh,
be
almost
surprised
certainly.
if maybe this is our first look at the, like, first good look at the new anime coming now that Ash's story is wrapping up.
Mm,
Last year, they revealed the Hisui region web anime,
that's
which didn't
right.
seem to hit too big. But I don't know. Why not tease your brand new anime with new characters
Yeah,
here?
especially now that Ash is kind of stepping out of the limelight, and then they can kind of introduce us to the new characters, whoever they're going to end up being. Have they announced like who the characters are?
I don't know if they've announced their names, but you can look at them. They're I want to say it's like very Scarlet Violet inspired looking.
Okay.
I think they have like that color scheme.
Hmm. All right. Well, Pokemon Day is on Monday, and the stream I want to say is did I say it was 6 a.m. Pacific? Yeah, 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Pacific, aka 9 a.m. Eastern, if you are on the East Coast. And I will be watching it live. I'm very excited for it, and then we'll be talking about it all next week for this show. So check back for what actually happens and compare it against what our predictions were. But kind of following up on a story from a few months ago, we talked about, I think maybe you were on the episode, but Xbox executives were tweeting out about how they came to an agreement with Nintendo to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo systems. And at the time, I was kind of just like, this was probably done to counter Sony's objections to the Activision Blizzard acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Since like Sony's like main complaint was that like, oh, well, Microsoft's going to do this and they're going to make Call of Duty and all these Activision Blizzard games exclusive to Xbox. And Xbox came out and was like, hey, look, we're bringing Call of Duty to more platforms than before our acquisition of Activision Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
And the news this week is that they're kind of putting their money where their mouth is, because they have officially entered a legally binding 10-year contract with Nintendo to bring Xbox games to their platform, or Call of Duty games to their platform. And the official statement says, quote, Microsoft and Nintendo have negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players the same day as Xbox, with full feature and content parity, so they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty. We are committed to providing long-term equal access to Call of Duty to other gaming platforms, bringing more choice to players and more competition to the gaming market. All right, so my first reaction, other than feeling like their motives for this are exactly what I thought they were, they're trying to fend off the Sony argument they're going to make Call of Duty exclusive. My first reaction, other than that, is how the hell is Call of Duty going to run on Switch?
Yeah, it's so a couple things with this. You mentioned you corrected yourself from Xbox games to Call of Duty games. Interestingly, Brad Smith, I think is his name. I forget his name.
Vice President.
Yeah, Vice President. He released the statement which said what you just read, but he in his tweet he says something along the lines of, "We're excited to bring Xbox games to Nintendo." I don't know if that's a slip up, and some people have reached out to him trying to get word on what that means. Did he just mean to say Call of Duty games? Is it more Xbox games? Because Xbox has brought games over.
Yeah.
But I think this could speak to a larger partnership. And then also, I don't think Call of Duty will run on Switch well, but I don't know if it's necessarily the Switch that they're talking about. And I'm not saying this is like a tease of what's to come for Nintendo, but this acquisition is probably not going to go through, assuming it's approved, till 2024, maybe even 2025 at the current rate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be really shocked if Switch was still Nintendo's main console 2 years from now. Perhaps Nintendo's Switch successor is much more powerful and can run Call of Duty games on parity with Xbox and PlayStation. I do not think that's the case. And unfortunately, I think that means Nintendo players will be playing Call of Duty via Switch cloud gaming,
Yeah,
which is, you can't do that with a first person shooter that requires like fast paced reaction speeds. It's, I don't know.
yeah, it's one thing when it's Kingdom Hearts for some freaking reason, but
Yeah.
yeah, Call of Duty is a whole different beast when it comes to like latency and everything.
Mhm.
Because like I don't know if you've played any of the recent Call of Duty games, but that's going to require some serious downgrading unless it's on the cloud to run on Nintendo's current hardware.
Yeah, even if it is on the cloud, I know when I play Call of Duty, I'm going to turn on crossplay so I can farm those easy kills. Because I'm sorry, Switch players, but you got no shot against PlayStation, PC, and Xbox.
I mean, that's basically like you might as well be playing against bots, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, Go
Do
ahead.
you think that this indicates anything with Nintendo's Switch successor? I don't think it does necessarily. And in fact, I wonder if Xbox is going to maybe try to talk to Nintendo about cloud gaming and say, "Hey, we've got our own cloud gaming and it works really well. What if we put that on your consoles instead of your own cloud gaming?"
My theory, ever since Nintendo and Xbox started putting like games like Ori and Cuphead, I mean Cuphead's since gone
Mhm.
multi-platform, but
Minecraft and
Minecraft, like all these Xbox Game Studios published games onto Switch, including achievement support.
yeah.
My theory has been that Xbox Cloud Gaming was going to come to Switch, and then you'd be able to play any game on like Game Pass on your Switch. Like
Mhm.
that is my long running theory, and one day it's going to be proven correct, especially with this kind of taking an additional step, seemingly towards getting us there, right?
Yeah.
Like I still maintain that that's going to happen one day. I think Switch is ripe for it. It's already on iOS and Android. You can already do that with Xbox Cloud Gaming.
It works
You can,
pretty well too. I've used both Switch's cloud gaming and Xbox's, and Xbox's is much better. The latency still exists, but I played Disney Dreamlight Valley and other games like that on my phone, and it's pretty flawless.
I mean, I way back in 2019, I remember I was at XO19, which is Xbox's big convention. And this time it was out in London. They used to do it every year in a different location. I don't know if they've done it since the pandemic. So I might have gone to the last XO festival. But I was checking out their, it was, God, what was it called? What was the project? Was it just Project X Cloud is what it was called.
Yeah.
And I was playing Gears of War on it. I was pretty surprised by how well it played.
Yeah.
Like I was playing Halo, I was playing Gears. I was like, okay, these games are going to be a tough sell for like a cloud gaming, but I wasn't feeling that noticeable of latency. And I know some people who play Xbox through their PCs, like they do the cloud gaming on their PC for games that aren't brought over to PC, which, you know, most games are brought natively over to the PC on the Xbox. However, like some things like Rare Replay, for example, one of my friends, he wanted to play GoldenEye really bad because now that it's on Rare Replay, he wanted to play the new version of it. And he didn't have an Xbox. He just had a gaming PC. So he fired that up and used the Xbox cloud gaming and was able to play it perfectly on that. So if they brought that over to Switch, I think people would be very happy.
Yeah, I agree. It would be, yeah. I mean, it's just better than Nintendo's cloud service, frankly. And if you're going to play Call of Duty on a Switch, I would not want to use Nintendo's version.
Especially if that also opens up like the Game Pass library to Switch users. Like
That'd be huge. That'd be really, really huge. I could see. Well, I don't know if they'd interact this much, but like, man, imagine like a $600 bundle that comes with like a Series X and a Switch or something, and like, it'd be hard for PlayStation to ignore a big team up between those two.
I mean, PlayStation took a long time to even add like the EA Play, right?
Yeah.
Like they whatever, is that what their subscription service is called?
Yeah. EA Play.
Okay, yeah. So EA Play for the long time. I remember PlayStation actually turned them down, and then they went to Xbox because like PlayStation's like, we don't see the value in this subscription service. And now I think EA Play is on PlayStation because like PlayStation is like, all right, yeah, maybe subscription services are the future.
Even Ubisoft Plus, I can't remember if it is on PlayStation yet or they just announced it was. But I remember when the new PS Plus stuff started, they were like, we're going to bring Ubisoft Plus to PS Plus eventually. I don't know if that's happened yet, but Xbox has had Ubisoft Plus for a minute now.
But focusing it back to Nintendo, like, what is the likelihood do you see as like this is going to be the way forward for kind of bringing these high end games that are developed pretty exclusively for next gen or new gen consoles to a system that essentially has the same power or even less power than the last generation of consoles.
I yeah, it's tough. I think the Switch successor is going to be just a more powerful Switch. I don't know if it's going to be super different. And perhaps that more powerful will bring the power needed to play natively, but otherwise it has to be through the cloud. I don't even think Call of Duty games are going to come to Switch. Like I really do think by the time Microsoft actually has control over Activision Blizzard, it will be we will be in the last year of the Switch, if not already on to the next thing.
Sure. I mean, I would be very surprised if we weren't, because what was it, 2020 was when they said we're halfway through the Switch life cycle, or is it 2021?
Yeah, 2020. Yeah,
Nintendo had
somewhere
said
around
something like, yeah, we're about the midway point of the Switch life cycle. And I think that
there.
also made a lot of people go out and buy a Switch because they're like, oh, well, there's nothing new coming anytime soon. So we should just go out and get a Switch. And sure enough, the sales continue to skyrocket. But two more stories here that I want to touch on. Next up, the Evolution Championship Series, aka EVO, the largest fighting game tournament in terms of like mainstream attention. It announced the slate of fighting games that competitors will be playing at this year's tournament. So Street Fighter VI makes its debut, and then that will be joined by Guilty Gear Strive, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, Tekken 7, The King of Fighters 15, Melty Blood Type Lumina, which apparently was a huge success at EVO last year. I've actually not played
heard of that
game at all. Dragon Ball Fighters and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, all of them are going to be played on the PS4, not the PS5, the PS4, which is interesting. I'm assuming the controller is better for fighters or something like that. Super Smash Brothers is notably absent, and Ultimate only ever had one appearance at EVO, and that was 2019.
And it was amazing. It was such a good... I don't know if you watched it, but I loved that year. And then Nintendo went and Nintendo'd and no more.
Yeah, well, it was scheduled to appear in 2020, but then the pandemic canceled that tournament, and then we just never got the game again. And Melee used to be kind of all over these tournaments. Like, that was kind of a mainstay for a long time. Its last appearance was 2019 as a side game, but in 2018, it was still a main game at EVO. But how close do you pay attention to EVO?
I kind of watch the highlights that pop up on Twitter, and I try to tune into the finales for like the big games I care about, like Smash Bros. Or Street Fighter 6. I'll definitely tune in this year. Dragon Ball. But it's always like it's like a week during the year that whenever EVO happens, or the weekend or whatever, where I'm just like, I got to pick a fighting game to get into it, because the excitement around EVO is one of the most exciting like video game conventions. I think it just seems like such positive vibes and good times, and the fighting game community seems really, really nice. And like every time I tweet about what game should I get into, I get like tons of replies, people just being like, I'll help you out, like come play this, and this. It's awesome. It's a good time of the year.
Yeah, I love following it along. I don't really watch that much of it live, but like following along with like the highlights, like you said, like that's what I usually catch up on. But it's going to be interesting this time around because I don't have Twitter anymore. So it'll be like, all right, well, how am I going to find these highlights? I guess I could find like compilations on YouTube, or I'm sure stupid Instagram Reels will show me some stuff.
Yeah.
The thing I hate about Instagram Reels is I will watch one video and then it's like, oh, you want to see this video every time you log on from now on. Like I watched one like Family Guy clip that recommended to me.
No, it's all Family Guy.
All I see now is Family Guy clips. And I'm like, I don't want to watch these. I just wanted to watch the one that was like advertised to me. And it's like the algorithm thinks like, oh, you're a Family Guy fan. We're going to just throw all this. Like, I haven't been a Family Guy fan in like 16 years. Like it goes back to like my college days that I was a Family Guy fan. But which ones of this list do you think you're going to be most excited to pay attention to?
I think Street Fighter 6, because I mean, between our Game Informer coverage last year, which was your cover story, and just the way that they've been marketing that game so far, and the things I've heard about the closed betas, like it's going to be the first fighting game I play on day one. I think like Street Fighter 6 is going to be the one I really get into, I think, and I'm really excited to watch it because it's the first one where Street Fighter 5 is not the main. It's going to be, they're switching to 6, and there's $1 million prize pool. So the stakes are going to be pretty high for Street Fighter 6. $1 million is a lot. I don't know
for sure
like what the usual pot of money is, but from what I've gathered just through excitement of EVO, like $1 million is like nothing to scoff at. I've seen people saying like every esports organization is training for Street Fighter 6 now.
Oh, absolutely. Like, and It feels so good. Like I've talked maybe a little bit about this on the show, but like kind of diving more into Street Fighter 6, like when we went out to Osaka for that trip, like I had played a little bit of it through like the beta and everything, but
Hmm.
ultimately it was just like, okay, this is so like I it started clicking with me more and more as I was out there. And I know Street Fighter 6 is not coming to Switch, unfortunately. I did actually ask them to kind of circle it back to a Nintendo like relationship here. I did ask them if they ever were going to bring like new mainline Street Fighter games to Nintendo, because I think the last one, oh god, was it Street Fighter 3 was the last time that like it was, or was it even Street Fighter 2 that
On
was the
day and
last
like on
time?
day and date type thing, or
Yeah, that like a mainline Street Fighter game came out at the same time or around the same time as other consoles. Like, was it
eh,
Street Fighter 2 on SNES?
if not two, then three, because it wasn't four for sure, and five obviously not. Um,
Yeah,
three, yeah,
that's wild.
that
But I
is.
asked them, I was like, "Hey, is our mainline?" Because obviously around Switch launch, we got Ultra Street Fighter 2, which is just like an updated version of basically Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix. But like, I really want to have like the new Street Fighter games on Switch. And I asked the director and producer of that as part of our rapid fire interview, and they were like, "We hope so one day." And it's like,
Yeah,
that's all they really could say. Like, I don't know, maybe they have an announcement somewhere around the corner, but
I'm sure their
um,
focus is on nailing the launch on
oh, absolutely,
standard consoles. This is going to be a really big moment for Street Fighter, whether or not it launches successfully or not.
I think that barring any kind of bad internet net code or something,
Yeah,
it's gonna be a huge success. Like based on what I've played, what I've seen, what I've ascertained from talking to the developers, I think it's gonna be a big success.
I,
Unfortunately, again, not coming to Switch, but it's something that I, as a old school Nintendo fan who grew up playing Street Fighter 2 on his SNES, like that's of great interest to me.
maybe it comes to Xbox, and then Xbox comes to Switch via cloud gaming, and then you can play Street Fighter 6 on your Switch.
God, I mean, speaking of games that you don't want latency on,
Yeah, true.
I mean, God. But all right, finally, Wesley, we now know when the final Super Mario Brothers movie trailer is coming. And
Wahoo!
for some reason, Nintendo felt it was necessary to let us know 2 weeks in advance that there would be a
Yeah,
Nintendo Direct focused on the Super Mario Brothers movie on March 9th. We also got a new poster that is focused on Mario Kart, and we it looks like we got Donkey Kong, Peach, Mario, Toad, and I think that's Cranky Kong all the way on the right. And then we also have a blue
yeah,
shell flying in, which so I think that's is that the first time we've seen a blue shell in these
it is. Yeah,
trailers.
I think so.
And then
At least
we
so
have a
ups at
Bob
the front.
Omb. What
Yes.
was that?
Oh, nothing. I was just going to mention that Toad being in like a monster truck is
Yeah.
cool.
So they're definitely playing into the more recent Mario Kart stuff with having everybody have their like kind of own seemingly customizable carts. But
Yeah.
yeah, so as with all the Nintendo Direct announcements surrounding this movie, like whenever they're saying there's going to be a direct about this movie, they do tell us there's not going to be any game news included. First up, why do you think they announced this so early?
It's definitely a strange one. I was doing some editing this morning and you dropped the tweet in and my eyes see the word direct first, so I'm like, "Oh my god." And then I see it, I'm like, "Oh, it's just a direct for just a trailer." But doing it so far in advance is I am puzzled. I think it's just a Nintendo weird decision because I don't really see the purpose. Like the only other franchise that does this really is like Fast and Furious. Like I don't know why you hype up a trailer reveal this far in advance. I mean, it's going to be Mario Day in Japan when it comes out, so maybe they're just getting started on those
Hmm.
celebrations. But I don't know.
I wonder if they were worried it was going to leak, like the announcement. I wonder if like there was some rumblings that like somebody found out and they're like, well, let's just tell them ourselves.
That's
Like that's
yeah. Is that's even? I mean, I guess for me, like I don't even would that leak like make waves. Like if it leaked that the final Mario trailer was coming in March, I'd probably be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. The movie comes out the next month.
yeah, it comes out in April, but Nintendo is a company that loves having kind of control over the way they divvy out the
Hmm.
information. So I could see why they would, them in particular, why they would be kind of super like, oh, let's get ahead of it then, even though it's just an announcement of a trailer. It's not like the trailer itself leaked.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the only thing I could think of, or maybe they're just like, you're going to build something around it. I have no idea, but
yeah, the lack of, or them saying like there will be no game announcements confirms what I think we've all known along, which is that, yeah, we're just not going to get a new Mario anything with this movie, which, you know, it's tough lining up game schedules and in general, and then lining up with the movie would be really tough. But it is very fascinating to me that Nintendo didn't push to get some kind of Mario game content out for this movie.
Now, what would you do? I don't think this is going to happen, so don't take this as a prediction. What would you do if the post-credit scene, there were two of them? The first one is like teasing a Mario 2, and the second one is a trailer for a new Mario game.
That just gave me goosebumps. That would be so freaking awesome if like, oh my, I hope they do that. And I hope they don't even tell like press or anything ahead of time. I hope like we all discover naturally watching this movie. That would be so cool, man. An Odyssey 2 trailer or something like that, or a new 2D Mario with the new art style. That'd be amazing. If this doesn't happen now, you've ruined my movie going experience.
Well, that's why I prefaced it by saying I don't think this is going to happen. What do you hope is in this final trailer? I have one thing that I want to see, but I want to know what you want to see. I
want to hear Mario talk more. Because people have been piecing together different teasers and trailers, and they've changed some lines. I don't know if on Twitter it went around this week that they changed one of Mario's Wahoos, and it sounds a lot better now. And I just want to, I want to hear like what the final Chris Pratt Mario sounds like. And then I don't know if I necessarily need anything else from this movie. I think I'm just sold and ready to go. Maybe a little more Luigi. I think we only really saw the Luigi's Mansion tease, but some more of him.
What do you think about Yoshi?
Oh my god, yeah, Yoshi's not anywhere in these trailers.
We have not seen or heard of any kind of Yoshi inclusion in this movie. And that seems like a pretty glaring oversight, especially with Mario Kart being a part of it. Like he really became like his own character for the first time in games like Mario Kart and in games like, you know, the first Yoshi's Island on SNES.
What if they're saving Yoshi for the sequel, and the sequel is Yoshi's Island or something like that? Like the Super Mario Bros. Movie Yoshi's Island has nothing to do with the game, but they're just using that title because that is interesting that he's not in any. Yeah, now that you mention it, that is strange.
Yeah, we're getting all these other characters, like, you know, the fact that I know that Donkey Kong was where Mario made his debut, so it kind of makes sense that like the Kong family is included in it, but the fact that like it seems like Diddy Kong is in this, it's like Cranky Kong. Like
I think
maybe
Funky Kong.
Yeah, like if it's so weird to me that like Yoshi would be the one that they would leave out. Again, maybe they're doing something with like a Super Mario World style twist for like Mario 2. But it seems like that's a very, very main character. That's even more main than like leaving out like Wario or Waluigi.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I honestly thought Wario or Waluigi were going to be kind of like the post-credits tease.
That would make sense. That would be, at least one of them. Probably Waluigi, I feel like.
You think? I was thinking Wario because Waluigi kind of is like, comes with the territory of Wario. But like I think Wario is kind of like the main guy. I mean, he was the main bad guy in Mario Land 2.
Do we think Wario and Waluigi are in the Mushroom Kingdom world, or in their, you know, Brooklyn Plumber world?
I think they're going to be in the Mushroom Kingdom world.
Okay. Man, I'm so excited for this movie.
Yeah, I can't wait. So we're about a month and a half away from the launch of the movie, and then 2 weeks away from the this final trailer. So I'm getting more and more excited as we go. Hopefully we'll have more coverage of this. I'm trying to figure out some way that, like, you know, we can do something cool with this movie, but we'll see what happens.
Let's do a screening in Super Nintendo World at Universal Studios Hollywood.
I was going to say I'll have Chris Pratt co-host the All Things Nintendo one week.
That'd actually be really awesome.
But that is all the news for this week, Wes. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to go over a ton of impressions and reviews from recent games that we have played. We will be right back. This week, rather than doing the traditional 3-segment show, we are actually only going to do 2 segments here. So this is going to be the final segment of the show, but I think it's going to be a pretty beefy one. I spent much of last weekend putting some time into several recent Switch games. And Wes, I know you have recently reviewed one of these games that I've been playing, and that is what we are going to chat all about here. Let's see, where do we want to start here? I guess we'll start with the game that hits today, which I guess there's two games that hit today. We'll start with both of those. The first one, Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe.
Yeah.
What's your interest level on a game like this?
It's high, but not super high because I still need to go play Forgotten Land.
Okay. Well, Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe is kind of like the back in like the 2000s into the early 2010s, the Kirby franchise, especially on the consoles, was very gimmick heavy. You know, the most recent entry at that point was Kirby's Epic Yarn, which was fun, but it was also pretty easy, and it was very like, all right, the aesthetic is kind of the main attraction here. Kirby's Return to Dreamland in 2011, when it came out just 1 year later, was very much like, oh, this is like back to the original Kirby style. It even had Dreamland in the title. It wasn't just like Kirby's blank. It was Kirby's Return to Dreamland. There was an announcement of like, this is going back to like the old school Kirby. And that's very much what it feels like. It's a side-scrolling platformer. You can play as Kirby or co-op with King Dedede, Meta Knight, and Bandana Waddle Dee, or you can play as four Kirbys. But like, it is like, you know, you have copy abilities, you can attack these levels in different ways, and there's some pretty challenging boss fights, especially in like the other content. Like the main story is relatively easy, but like then you unlock a whole suite of other stuff. But this game really felt like the return to that form that I always wanted with the Kirby franchise around this time. And I remember playing it on Wii and loving it. And this deluxe package that they've brought to Switch starting today, it brings the entire base game, but it adds into that base game new abilities like that you can copy. So there's the Festival ability, which is actually from Kirby Star Allies, which is the first Switch game or first Kirby Switch game. And then there are two all new abilities. There's the Sand ability, which basically like, you know, you can splash sand up. You can do kind of like a rush that like splashes sand up in the air, or you can almost like Spider-Man or Sandman from Spider-Man, where like he like forms a fist out of the sand and punches forward. And then there's the one that I really love, which is the Mecha ability, which basically Kirby is in a Gundam essentially, and he's able to like fly around. He has like a kind of a jetpack. He can shoot missiles and lasers and rockets and just like a blaster. And he's very, very powerful. It's actually probably my favorite ability in the entire game, my favorite regular ability. And then you can also, if you want, if I guess you're playing with like a kid or this is your first time playing like a platforming game, there's a Magolor helper. So Magolor is the character that you're kind of trying, the whole story is based around getting him back to his home dimension, and his ship is crashed on Kirby's planet. And in this mode, you are gathering all the parts, or in the story, you're gathering all the parts to his ship so he can go home. Magolor Helper just makes it so like if you fall into a pit, or if he'll fish you out like Lakitu in Mario Kart, or if you're low on health, he'll throw you a health item. So that's good for like you know, if you're playing with like kids or playing with somebody who doesn't typically play video games, or you just want to breeze through the game, that's perfectly fine. There's also when you beat the game, you unlock a few different things. The first one is the extra story mode, which that was in the original, but it's like a more difficult, like kind of modified version of the original stories. Like the bosses have modifications, and I think Kirby has a little bit less health, and the bosses do more damage. So it's a more challenging version. There's extra objectives that you have to do, and like the bonus stages where the wall's kind of creeping towards you and you have to keep going to outrun the wall. The wall moves faster, so it's a more challenging mode in that way. And then there's Magolor Epilogue, which is an all-new post-game story that they give you. And this, you play as Magolor, who's like this magical character. So he has like projectiles. So Nintendo kind of described it as playing like a Mega Man type game, where it's like, all right, you have like this projectile that you can fire. He feels like crap at first, but this is very important. You keep accumulating more and more power, and as you do that, you can actually like upgrade him. Like every time you beat a boss, you get a new ability, But on top of that, like there's a combo system. So like based on like how long you keep your combo chain alive with like attacking enemies, you will actually get magic orbs that you can use to upgrade Magolor's ability. So it's like, all right, I want the projectiles to be more powerful. So you put your magic orbs in projectiles. It's almost like not. It's a very shallow like RPG style upgrade system. So I I really liked the Magolor epilogue after I started getting some of the upgrades. And it's like, okay, we started really, really kind of sluggish and underwhelming in terms of his powers, but the story is all about him getting his power back. And it really does feel that way. Like by the end of it, you feel super powerful, even though the bosses in this mode are more difficult than the main story. I had a good time with this epilogue, and I think it's a great addition to the game. And then there's also Mary Magoland, which is very funny. As Ben Hansen pointed out a couple weeks ago, it sounds very much like Mary Magdalene from the Bible. But Mary Magoland is basically like an amusement park that Magolor builds, and you can go there and play a bunch of mini games from past Kirby games. And there's also a couple of new ones. So like the Samurai Kirby, and then like the one where like you're using the frying pan to hit, I think it's an egg, like back and forth. Or no, it's a bomb. And then there's one where Kirby has to eat eggs but avoid bombs that are being thrown at him. So there's a bunch of different mini games that you can play through, and it's a really good package. Like I really liked it. I liked the base game a lot when it came out in 2011. It's brought forward with like HD visuals, all those new upgrades, and then the new content is also really meaningful. So I actually gave this game an 8.75 out of 10. This was pretty much a no-brainer for me to recommend people to check this out, especially if you're a fan of Kirby. And I said this in my review, but it really does deserve a place in the Switch's catalog next to Forgotten Land, because Forgotten Land is, in my opinion, the best Kirby game. This is up there with that, I would say. And it's a different style because it's a 2D platformer, whereas Forgotten Land is a 3D platformer, kind of in the vein of Super Mario 3D World, which is why I think you should play Forgotten Land, because I know you love yourself some Super Mario 3D World.
Indeed. So is it so like with it being Return to Dreamland, is this like its own game, or is this a sequel to the Game Boy game Kirby's Dream Land?
I don't know if there's really a sequel. It's just I kind of look at a lot of Kirby games as kind of standalone in their story, just the way I do with like a lot of Mario games, where it's like, okay, the Galaxy games, like maybe there's some loose connections as you go forward into Odyssey, where it's like, oh yeah, Rosalina is referenced here, or like the God, what are the star creatures called?
I'm blanking.
Lumas, right?
Lumas, yeah.
I looked and I didn't see it. I just I came to it naturally. But yeah,
I was thinking of the Rabbids version of them.
I know, that's why I was too, because that's the most recent one in my memory.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Lumas are referenced in like some games in the future. Like Super Mario 3D World has like some Galaxy references, but like overall, like it's a standalone game. And that's the way like Shigeru Miyamoto has even pitched it, right? Where it's just like, yeah, I kind of look at all these as like, you know, these are the same like actors and characters, but they're in a different play, or they're in a different performance. Like that's why Super Mario Brothers 3 is kind of positioned like it's a stage play. Have you seen that before?
Yes, yeah.
Where like, yeah, like, you know, the first thing you see when you turn the game on is the curtain coming up. And like if you look at all like the background, it's all like, it looks like it's kind of fake, because it's like shadows cast on like a backdrop almost. So that's kind of the way. And like, because we've asked him like, hey, why is like Bowser kidnapping Peach, and then like in the next game they're all like having like a friendly go-kart race with each other. And he's like, oh well, this is why this is how I view them. So yeah, it's Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe, very fun game. I think you could play it regardless if you played the Game Boy games, regardless if you played Forgotten Land. I think personally,
how long does it run?
Oh man, it was maybe about 6 or 7 hours for me to play through the main story, maybe a little bit less than that. And then like with Magolor epilogue and like playing around with some of the mini games, I probably got up to about like just over 10 hours.
Okay.
So it's not a huge time commitment, but I would say maybe for your personal taste, I would say Forgotten Land is probably more up your alley, just because I know how much you love Super Mario 3D World.
Yeah, I need to get on it. I don't really know why I haven't, but
I'm going to be really upset with you if you like finally play it and you're like, oh my God, that would have been my game of the year in 2022.
That might happen based on the way I hear. That seems to be what happened to most people that play the game. It like ends up in their top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it a lot. I think I ended up giving my favorite game of on Nintendo anyway of 2022 to Pokemon Legends Arceus, but Forgotten Land was right behind it. But yeah, so that's Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe. Again, I gave it an 8.75. Let's jump over to another game that comes out as you're listening to this episode. That is a game you reviewed, Wes, which is Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. So talk me through this game.
Yes, so Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. I talked about it on a few episodes ago for my preview. But my thoughts are, like, in the final review, I gave it a 9, which is a very high score for me. I think I've reviewed 2 games this year, Fire Emblem Engage and Theatrhythm, both 9s. So Nintendo's really treating me this year. I played Final Bar Line on Switch, but that's a Square Enix game. Regardless, Final Bar Line is, it's really just everything I would ever want out of a Theatrhythm game. It is the same kind of Theatrhythm you know and love, chibi art style. Notes scroll across on the screen. You've got your party doing some combat below. Maybe they're just, lazily going through a field, enjoying the sights. But you're not really focused on that because you're focused on the screen and the notes going across. On 3DS, I used a stylus to hit those notes, so it was a lot more tactile and probably a little easier. Now on consoles, so PlayStation 4 and Switch, you can use any face button or any trigger to hit any note. And then if there's a directional slash associated with the note, you have to use an analog stick. And it's really strange. And especially in this world where every note we have has a specific button attached to it. Even going as far back as like Guitar Hero, a green note was the green button.
Yeah.
There are green notes, there are red notes, there are yellow notes in Theatrhythm, but you can hit them with any button as long as you hit them at the right time. And weirdly enough, there's 4, depending on the battle, usually there's 4 lines that the notes can appear. So you might have a green note at the top line, then a red note on the second line, then a green note on the third line, and then a red note on the fourth line. But you can theoretically just hit A on time. Mm-hmm. It's really weird. I wish for people jumping in, it's going to be especially weird. But I think that they should have maybe created a control scheme that tells you what buttons to press. After an hour, I was pretty comfortable with doing my own thing. Like I had a control scheme that I defaulted to, that I used on my own. And then at that point, I was just enjoying Theatrhythm, which is, it's just a massive celebration of Final Fantasy and even other Square Enix games. But 385 tracks. If every Final Fantasy game, not every, most of them are represented. All of the mainline ones are represented. If there's a song you love from a Final Fantasy game, there's like a 95% chance you can play through it in this game.
It's wild how many songs are in this game, by the way. Like I fired it up and
so much.
I played through because they only give you the opportunity at first to play. It's like Final Fantasy 5, Final Fantasy 7, Final
15.
Fantasy 15, maybe 14. Was 14 one of the
13
ones?
And 14, I think. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know 13 was available right off the bat.
I think it was. Yeah.
So you're given one key, and it's like you can unlock one game. And I wanted 10 because that's my favorite. But that was not one of the ones. It's like you need to complete one title before you continue. So I was like, all right, well, I'll play 7 then. Because I like 7's music a lot, and I like 7 Remake a lot. So I played through 7. Halfway through, I got a key, and I'm like, oh, cool, I'll go unlock 10. And it was like, oh, nope, you still need to play through this title all the way. So I was like, all right, well, then I'll unlock 15. So I unlocked 15, and then I was like, I'll get another key by the end of this title. I got to the end of 7, and it was like, no extra key. And I was like, well, so I started playing 15, and I'm like, all right, well, I don't like the music of 15 quite as much as I like 10, but I'll just play through 15 as much as I can until I get a key, and then I'm going to go over to 10 and just be like, all right, I'm just going to play this on repeat.
Yeah, you usually get those keys about halfway through, which is weird because you would think they would put those at the end of the title.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, well, they'll give me another one at the end, surely.
Yeah.
Nope.
Usually at the end, I know with 15, like when you finish 15, you unlock I think it's called Event Music Stage, which is one of my favorite aspects of the game. It's like you play it through a different screen. You go to like your main song selection, and under Event Music, you can select ones you've unlocked, and it plays a cinematic or a bunch of cinematics from the game while you're playing this song. So you don't have the chibi party down there doing any combat or anything. For Final Fantasy 15, it's like they threw together a bunch of the like most hype moments from the game, and then you played through Apocalyptic Noctis, which is a very exciting song. And it's just a really, really, really fun way to just remember Final Fantasy games. I don't know if you've got into it yet, but the Final Fantasy X-1 is amazing. Like just seeing key moments from that game while you're playing to Xanderkind or something like that is awesome. Like it's just a perfect, like it's a really, really almost perfect celebration of Final Fantasy as a series, and especially its music, which if you're a Final Fantasy fan, music is a big part of the experience for you. It's hard to deny that like Final Fantasy probably has the best catalog of songs in video game history.
I think we've had this discussion on this show before, and it's like the only ones that may rival it are like Mario and Zelda.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they've just been around so long. But for me, Final Fantasy, what's so great about it is like it's so different from game to game. And it's especially cool in Theatrhythm because if you play Final Fantasy 1 or 2, you're going to hear like the NES and the SNES like soundboards creating those songs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like orchestral versions. Even with Final Fantasy 7, which you played some of, it's like the PS1 version of those songs. And then you can also unlock Final Fantasy 7 Remake to hear those beautiful orchestral renditions. And they also have it's called Final Fantasy 7 Series, which when you unlock that, it'll be songs from Crisis Core and Advent Children and stuff like that. Same goes with 13. There's 13.2 music, 13.3 music. It's awesome. One of the big new aspects of this game is series quests, which are almost exclusively optional, but they're fun for people that are like really trying to unlock everything in this game. Basically, you can play through a stage and, you complete the song without losing your HP. You'll get a little reward, maybe a potion of Phoenix Down, something like that. Series quests are these optional objectives that are tacked on, and they can be actually quite difficult. Sometimes they'll say, defeat this boss in 30 seconds, or just defeat this boss in general. And that's where this new level of strategy that's never been in a Theatrhythm game comes in. Because if the boss is, for the most part, like when I'm playing Final Fantasy 13, I have just like my favorite 4 characters in the party. But then I'll get to a boss that you have to defeat in 30 seconds, and I realize its weakness, or it's resistant to lightning, like the magic effect lightning. So I'll have to, rework
not the character lightning.
Yeah. I'll have to, her too, because she specializes in lightning magic. So I'll have to take her out of my party because she's not going to do enough damage to help that happen. And then I'll be, maybe I throw in somebody from Final Fantasy X with fire magic because the boss is resistant to fire, or weak to fire magic. And so it forces you to create these fun little parties to add a little extra flavor of strategy. You're not doing anything different when you play through the song. Like your characters are still just meandering at the bottom, fighting the boss.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a nice little, it's an extra 30 seconds of thinking you do before going into the song. It's a nice touch.
Making sure you have a good loadout.
Exactly, yeah. And then if you complete those extra objectives, the quests, you'll unlock things. Sometimes it's pretty lousy. You'll get like a potion. Other times you might get a really cool collector card, of which there are like 1,000 plus in the game to view in your museum. And sometimes these collector cards are like Pokemon style cards of an enemy you fought. Other times it's promotional art from Final Fantasy 15 or something like that. Basically like a concept art museum. And it's definitely more so for like the hardcore Theatrhythm fans like myself. I'm going to be playing this game for years, I guess. I don't know. I love this game a lot. And I'm going to be just collecting more and more of those because it's, something to do in the game.
And there's going to be so many pieces of DLC coming this year that you're going to have plenty of reason to go back.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger, the Nier series, Live Alive, and even more that I'm forgetting. And I'm hoping, they haven't said anything, but I'm hoping Final Fantasy 16 as well, because that's right around the corner.
It would make so much sense if they did that.
Yeah, comes out in June, so... from what I've heard of the scores and trailers and stuff, like the music in that game is going to be really awesome. So I hope that they bring that over.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And it seems like a no-brainer that they do that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know why you wouldn't. Like, launch it the same day that Final Fantasy 16 comes out. Just build that, let them work together like that. That'd be awesome.
Unless they're worried about spoilers, because there is some like very minor, like, oh, then you fight this boss, and then you fight this thing.
I didn't even think about that.
Maybe this fall it'll come out or something.
Definitely, yeah, that would be weird to do day and date now. I do forget that they definitely do spoil. Even like title names can sometimes be a spoiler.
It's kind of like how I experienced the story of Star Wars Episode 3 first through the Xbox game.
Oh, that's a good
because
game though. It's a good
it came
game.
out like a week before the movie, and I was like, oh, I'm excited for this. I'm going to play this in the meantime. And I was like, oh, now I know everything that happens in this movie.
That's the alternate ending in that game. I believe Anakin kills
Emperor.
Emperor Palpatine as the like alternate ending
Yeah,
cutscene.
I think that is that. And then there's also, I mean, there's all kinds of times where like characters kill Darth Vader or
Yeah,
Palpatine or something instead of doing what like is canonical in the
yeah,
Star
Star
Wars lore.
Killer and
Yeah.
Force Unleashed. But yeah, no, and then the last aspect of Theatrhythm I want to touch on is the multiplayer, which is really cool. I wasn't expecting to care much about this because I'm just not big on multiplayer usually, especially for rhythm games.
Hmm.
But what it does is you start a room and up to 3 other people can join it, and then when you have 4 people, you all select a song. It randomly selects a song, kind of like Mario Kart does with
Hmm.
levels online. And then all 4 of you are playing that song. Now, your screen's just going to show you. You'll be playing Theatrhythm the same way, but you have like a new bar that builds up. And as it builds up, it unleashes effects automatically to your enemies. So, and they'll be doing the same to you. So you'll be playing this song you know very well. You're like, I'm going to crush. And then all of a sudden, a fat chocobo rush is what it's called, comes on screen. And you've got these giant chocobos blocking your view, which makes it very hard to hit notes. Or they might send an effect that adds additional notes to your screen that are fake, and so it's tough to see in real time which ones are fake and which ones aren't. So you're going to be hitting all these extra notes you don't need to hit, and they will ruin the flow and rhythm. And there's a bunch of different little effects like that that really change up the game, makes it a lot more hectic, almost gives it like a Mario Party feel, where you're clearly not trying to go for like this world record high score. You're just trying to beat your opponents. But gosh, there are some people who are amazing at this game. I would be, doing my best, and they are still getting all critical hits, even though I know they're getting fat chocobo rushes and the fake notes and all this kind of stuff.
That's what
Like,
I wanted to ask you is how good did you get at this game? Because you were putting a decent amount of time into it. But then like I was playing it and I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at rhythm games. Like I used to play Guitar Hero competitively, but like when it comes to like because there's sometimes where you have to hold 2 notes at the same time and like throw
yeah,
the sticks in different directions. And when it came to that stuff, my fingers just went stupid basically.
I've gotten pretty good. If I do bad on a song, I still get an A, which is like a D for me because I'm shooting for triple S. So like mostly rainbow critical hits. There's rainbow critical is when you basically hit a note perfectly. There's also yellow critical, which is like almost perfect but not quite. And then the notes get worse from there. There's like amazing and then bad and good and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm like hitting most notes perfectly at this point, trying to get high scores, especially when I'm replaying songs. But I'm on expert and I do ultimate sometimes if it's a song I'm familiar with. But there's a fourth difficulty that unlocks supreme, which I've messed around with, and I don't understand how it's supposed to be playable. I die like in 15 seconds. It's not. I don't even. Yeah, I don't. It just does not register in my brain. Expert and ultimate keep up with the rhythm of the game or the song. So like if you know the song, you can kind of anticipate what you're going to be doing. Supreme just throws that out the window, and you were just like, it's just wild.
I've settled nicely into like the expert mode,
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like a kind of a weird thing because it's just the second difficulty. It's just like the one above whatever. Is it normal or is it beginner?
yeah. Oh gosh, I wish I had it in front of me.
Whatever the
Yeah, the
easiest
first one.
difficulty is.
I
I
think it's
just go
just
one
normal.
up, and I think it's called expert, and then it's ultra, then it's supreme.
Yeah,
I've settled pretty nicely into I can do pretty well on expert,
I think
and
expert is the sweet spot. So I wouldn't feel bad staying an expert. It's like that's where I find the most enjoyment out of these songs.
I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. I should try out ultra, and then after playing
Yeah.
one song, I'm like, nope, never trying that again.
Yeah, it gets especially tough because on field music stages, you have notes that are green and you have to hold them. And while holding them, move the analog stick to move the note up and down on this little snake path. And then on Ultimate, you'll be doing that while having to press like 10 other buttons with your other hand. And it's really confusing. I do think, if someone's out here listening, expert is a very good spot to be. And I think that's where you have the most fun enjoyment with the game where you can still focus on the music and enjoy what you're seeing. Ultimate is where you're going to start to be like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm hitting these notes somehow. Oh my God, here we go. Keep going.
Yeah, I don't know how people play those. It's just it might, again, like you said, your brain just doesn't even register it a lot of the times,
Yeah, you're
and
just doing it.
that's kind of where I'm at with Ultra. But it sounds like you're with Ultra where I am at with Expert,
Yeah.
and then you're also with Supreme where I'm at with Ultra. So you're like
Supr-
one difficulty up.
Supreme is like might be a pipe dream for me. I don't know. I don't know if I've got it in me to do that. It's just it's so different and fast, and I don't enjoy it as much, to be honest. So I'm very happy with Ultimate and or Ultra and Expert. But yeah, I guess like in my final thoughts, if you like Final Fantasy music, I would recommend this game to you. If you like rhythm games but don't have any familiarity with Final Fantasy, I think I'd still recommend it to you because I don't think I've ever met somebody who didn't like Final Fantasy music after hearing it. And it's a fun
It's
rhythm game and a
so
really good
good.
celebration.
Yeah, I'm having a great time with it so far. You've put in significantly more time than I have. I've put in a few hours, I would say,
Yeah.
but you've spent a lot of time with it, and it clearly shows your skill level. But like you said, you gave it a 9 out of 10,
Yeah.
and you can read the full review on GameInformer.com.
Please do. Yeah.
And I actually confused this because there's another Square Enix game that, because I said like, oh, this is another game that came out this week. This actually came out last week. Theatrhythm did. This came out
Yes.
February 16th,
16th. Yeah.
16th or 17th, one of those days. And there is another game by Square Enix that just came out as this episode hits on Friday the 24th. Octopath Traveler 2.
Yeah.
That is out now. That the original one started out as a Switch exclusive. That was around the time that Switch launched. This game came out. I think it was the summer after Switch launched.
Yeah. Because it was at the original reveal of the Switch with the couch and stuff. I think it was Project Octopath Traveler at that point.
Yeah, Square Enix keeps doing that where they're like Project Octopath Traveler, and we're like, all right, what's the name going to be? And they're just like, the name is Octopath Traveler.
Yeah.
They did the same thing with Project Triangle Strategy.
Yep.
All right, now it's just Triangle Strategy. Okay, so they're not being very clever with their project code names.
Yeah.
But Octopath Traveler 2 is out, and I've played about probably the first 2 or 3 hours of this, and it's a good time. Like, I'm having a really good time with it. If you liked the first one, I feel like this is an improvement over the first one, but it's also very much like iteration in terms of like making it so the mechanics are just they're evolved. They're a little bit better than they were before, and I think that's a good thing. I think that the base of Octopath 1 was very good. It's just like there was some grinding that was like it felt a little unnecessary. This, at least as of now, seems a little bit more balanced. The HD 2D visual style is substantially better than I think any other game to this point. So like the HD 2D was used in Octopath 1, it was used in Triangle Strategy, and it was used in Live Alive.
Mm-hmm.
This, I think, is probably the best it's ever looked. Like, I think the animation looks great. It no longer does that weird thing that Octopath 1 did where everything that wasn't like straight down the center was like blurry. Like,
Oh,
it
doesn't? Good.
No.
God, yeah, that was the worst of. I hated that effect.
I did too. It almost made it feel like a dreamlike type of situation, but I didn't like it at all. Like it just didn't look sharp to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now everything looks sharp throughout the entire screen. It's an improvement. I've only played in the Warriors path because it's the same thing where it's like, all right, you have these characters from the same archetypes that you can choose from, and they're different characters. And I'm assuming at some point their paths will converge in some way that like makes sense to the overarching story. But as of now, they're all kind of distinct storylines. I've been playing through the Warriors storyline a little bit, and like, you know, there's still like things you can do around town. Like there was one where like there was this guy who was being like a rowdy customer in a bar, and so you had to confront him and you challenge him to kind of like a warrior's duel. And you know, it's fun in that way where each character has their own distinct abilities. But I'm interested to see where it goes from here. The opening hour of the Warriors thing is it reminded me of Lost Odyssey a little bit, where it's like, all right, you're just kind of like thrown into the middle of this giant war that's playing out. And it's kind of cool in that way, but I mean, it doesn't really have the visual chops of a Lost Odyssey where it's like just like you can sense the scale. It's just like there's a lot of sprites on screen right now fighting each other. It's a cool opening, and then it kind of like flashes forward a little bit in the story to kind of get you to like the meat of the storyline. But I'm having a good time with it. We had a freelancer actually handle this for us for our review, so I was not the person who reviewed it, but I did work with him on his review to get it up on our website. So I have read his review and like kind of discussed a little bit of it with him. His name is Josh Broadwell, and he gave it an 8.5 out of 10. And his headline is 2 is better than 1. So I think he also agrees that
awesome.
It's an improvement over the first one. And he was also very happy that the blur effect was gone from the sides of the HD2D visual style. But yeah, that is out today. It's a big day for Switch, but it's this one's actually multi-platform right from the get-go, as opposed to Octopath 1, where it kind of came to Switch and then it came to Steam and then eventually it came to the other consoles. This one is multi-platform from the jump, but it is still on Switch. So if you liked playing Octopath 1 on Switch, you can go play Octopath Traveler 2 on Switch. Next up, we still have 4 more games I want to talk about here. But this is the next game that I actually ended up playing and reviewing over the course of last weekend. It's a game that came out earlier this month, but in actuality, it came out about 21 years ago. It's a Metroid Prime Remastered. Now, have you played this? I guess that's my first question.
I have not.
Have you played Metroid Prime in general?
I have not. No.
Okay.
I missed the GameCube generation. Like I didn't own a GameCube. I played it at my friend's. So that's probably my biggest Nintendo hole in gaming history.
Okay. So Metroid Prime, just, widely considered one of the greatest single-player first-person shooters of all time.
Yeah.
Largely considered one of the best GameCube games of all time. And, we got a Wii version that used motion controls and was just kind of like, it was included as part of Metroid Prime Trilogy. And, we have Metroid Prime 4 somewhere on the horizon. Who knows if it's like actually coming, but it's been in development for several years now. It was scrapped and now it's back with a different developer. But Metroid Prime Remastered is just really what it says it is, but in the best way possible, right? So it gives you the shiny coat of paint. It gives you modernized controls, but those modernized controls feel so good. Like it really does feel like, oh, this is a modern first-person shooter. Like so much of it just feels and plays so well, and the visuals keep up with it too. Like they didn't redo all the character models. They didn't redo the art style like Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. Like that, they redid that entire visual style. This, they just cleaned it up, made it maybe a little bit more detailed, and made it in HD. Like they up-resed it, and it looks so good. Like the GameCube art style holds up so well. And like think about like Wind Waker HD when that came to Wii U. That looked like a brand new game, the way they cleaned it up, and like that art style held up so well. I could say the same thing about Metroid Prime Remastered, because I put this in my review that like if you could fool, because like the way it plays, the way it looks, the way it sounds, you could fool a less knowledgeable gamer into thinking this is a brand new game for 2023.
When I see screenshots and stuff of it, it does look like that, and it's so funny. Right now in games, a lot of games are being remade, and we're paying $70 for them, which is fine. And then Nintendo releases this, which a lot of people, are just talking about how well done of a job it is, and they're charging $40 for it.
Yeah, it's I'm glad they didn't charge the full 60, but I still see people like, wow, this is $40. Well, how can they expect me to pay that? And you know what? I think that it's worth it. I don't know really what else to say aside from the fact this is like one of the best Nintendo games of the 21st century. And now there's a better way to play it, and it's available on a modern system. So it's like a no-brainer for me as well. And on this one, I was completely smitten with this upgraded version. And I gave it a 9.5 out of 10, which actually ties my highest score in my more than 8 years with Game Informer.
Ooh, what's the highest?
It ties Forza Horizon 5, which was, I guess, 2020, right? So like it took me a long time to reach that. I think before that it was maybe Mortal Kombat 10, which I gave a 9.25. I think that's what I gave it. I don't know. But yeah, so Metroid Prime Remastered, highly recommended. Whether you've played it before or not, I think it holds up. Like there's some minor like stuff that shows its age, like the fact that like when you are you use Morph Ball and like Samus rolls up into the ball, the camera is a little weird in that situation, or like the checkpointing feels a little antiquated in some ways. But other than that, like there's not a whole lot to complain about with this game.
Yeah,
like, it feels great.
It's one I'm going to check out, and I'm really excited about the dual analog stick functionality. I think that from what everything I've heard, it's perfect.
Yeah, so
And I think in your impressions or review, you said it's like the way to play now.
oh yeah, so they have four control schemes. I'm sorry. There is the single stick GameCube style gameplay, which originally you had to hold like I think the right bumper or something, and that would enter like aiming mode, almost like GoldenEye did back in the day.
Sounds terrible.
But now, that was that you can select that if you want. You can also do motion controls with the Joy-Cons, which is the way it plays on the Wii. So if you want to play like either of those two ways, you can do that. There's a hybrid mode which uses the GameCube and the Wii combined. So it's like single stick, but I think you can aim with the Joy-Cons as well. And then there's the modern version, the dual stick version, which it plays so good. So that's the way that I recommend playing if you want to check it out for the first time, especially. If you want the nostalgic experience, I guess you can go back and use those other control options. But yeah, it plays super well, and I really, really recommend playing this game, especially if you haven't before. But if you have before, like, you know how great this game is, and what really caught me off guard was how well the design still feels in 2023, because it's like we've evolved so much as an industry in the time since 2002, right? Like game design conventions have evolved so much. Like think about the differences in game design conventions from 2002 going back to 1982. So that 20-year gap, like, man,
Wild.
it is such a jump in like how far we've come from 2002, but still somehow the design conventions of this game, the way that like every exploration is rewarded if you do it the right way, and it feels so good. I very much recommend people check this out. It's available now on Switch. There was a digital version. I think it came out February 8th, and then as of this week, there's a physical version that is supposed to be in stores. I haven't seen it myself, but I'm kind of hunkered down in a snowstorm right now. But yeah, you might be able to find it in your local store shelves if you would prefer to get a physical version. And apparently there's a reversible cover for the physical version as well. I haven't seen what it looks like, but I saw a headline when I was perusing some Nintendo websites. Next up is the last one that we actually have a review for on GameInformer.com. That is Akka Arrh, which Charles Hart, Game Informer's editor, reviewed that. It's a new release from Atari, and it is a remake of a prototype that Atari put out in arcades. I think they only made a few of these cabinets, and it arrived in arcades, and it didn't really get the interest they were hoping for, so they just scrapped it, and it never came out. And what they did was they hired this veteran game designer named Jeff Minter to come in and finish the game, basically. Like, hey, remake this prototype in your own image. And it's very like neon painted. Like there's so many like messages popping up on screen, and there's pulsing music and voiceover and everything. It's kind of psychedelic in that way.
Yeah.
But as Charles pointed out in his review, it's also very distracting. I was playing this and I did one full playthrough because it's an arcade style game. So it's like, yeah, you basically go for as long as you can. And it's confusing at first because there's two layers, right? Like there's the top layer where you're fending off these enemies, and like you can shoot bombs, and if you hit an enemy with a bomb, it explodes as well. And then if another enemy gets caught in that explosion, they explode, and it sets off a chain reaction where like enemies just keep exploding and taking each other out. That's super satisfying. And then there's certain enemies that fly over, and you have to use a machine gun.
I put a little bit of time into it, but it did not really gel with me too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm happy it exists because, just the history of it. I think there was I want to say it's like less than 10 arcade cabinets made of this. So it was like basically a relic lost to time. And so now that it exists for everybody to play is really cool. But I pretty much agree with you and Charles's thoughts. I mean, I probably put in less than an hour, if that, maybe like 20 minutes. But it's distracting, and it just didn't really. I don't know. It doesn't work for me. I think it's interesting. It's interesting playing an arcade game where you're stuck in the middle basically, and you're shooting outwardly. Whereas most arcade games you're kind of from the bottom of the screen and whatnot. But I don't. I'm glad it exists, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah, I I was very confused when it was like, all right, now you push the bumper and your ship drops down to this other layer. And basically, you have nothing to do down there until later on when there's certain enemies that will come at you. And they will, if they get to the center where your ship is, they will go down into the second layer, and you have to drop down and take them out before more come down. And it's very confusing. And they're trying to steal these discs that are on the bottom layer or whatever it is. And I don't know. I don't think this is a game that I'm going to spend a ton of time playing. I'm with you. I'm glad it exists, but yeah, it's very distracting. The audio is overwhelming. I would say the good way to describe this game is like a sensory overload.
It would be great in an arcade. Like it fits perfectly with arcade. Loud, neon lights, lots of music. Like that would attract people to the cabinet. But playing it at home or on Switch on the go, yeah, it's not the move.
Yeah, but I was kind of hoping this game would score a little bit better just because I wanted a really cool arcade game. It was kind of giving me Geometry Wars vibes when I first saw it.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like it really lived up to that hype because Charles gave it a 6.75 out of 10. And, I'm probably close to agree. Maybe I'm a little bit higher than he is on it, but like I wouldn't score it too much higher personally.
Yeah.
It's a perfectly fine arcade game, but it's nothing that really stands out. It's one that like if I was at an arcade and they had a cabinet, I'd maybe put a token or two in, but I'm not gonna spend like hours upon hours playing this game, I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is out now on Switch as well. And then there are two more games that I checked out that I just wanted to chat about briefly before we wrap up here. The first is Dust and Neon. Have you heard about this game?
I haven't, no.
So this was actually showcased on the same stream that Sports Story when they had their release date announcement, when they were like, oh, it's available now. This was earlier on in that stream, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So like when we got a code for it, I was like, I'm going to check this out and see what it's all about. And it's a twin stick roguelite shooter set in a post-apocalyptic Wild West. And you're basically picking up weapons and blasting through like robot enemies. But if you die, you respawn back in a pod at your base, kind of like you would in Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
And then similar to Borderlands, you're also picking up like a ton of loot, and each enemy has different weaknesses and strengths. And I mean, that's probably a good thing because they throw like a ton of weapons at you. And I was looking at like the developer's website, and like according to them, there are more than 2,000 guns and more than 1,600 tonics, which you can use to like augment your attacks. But it plays pretty well. Like I'm having a good time so far with the couple of hours that I put into it. And they say the campaign is about 10 hours long, and it's out now on Switch and PC. So if that sounds like it's up your alley, I think that it's at least as of now, it seems like it's a pretty good game so far. You kind of like the Wild West stuff, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm looking at this game now. It's kind of giving me Weird West, I think is what it was called. Came out last year, maybe late 2021. But yeah, the top down like Wild West thing. I do love me a little mix of, neon, maybe some cyberpunk with cowboy though. That's a cool touch. But I don't know if I need a engrossing roguelite in my life right now. But this seems like it's a cool twist. I don't know if we have many roguelite cowboy games.
Yeah, I mean, I was sold when it was like, oh yeah, it's a twin stick shooter, which I tend to really like checking out twin stick shooters, mostly because they just drop you in the action. They're like, have fun.
Yeah.
And then it also has this weird, like interesting reload mechanic where you have to tap the button for each bullet. You have a revolver, right? And it's like, all right, tap it 6 times to put a bullet in. That's how you reload. Or like,
interesting.
Or if you have a shotgun, you have to hit the button twice to put different slugs in. And it's just an interesting twist on that, I guess. But yeah, I'm having a good time with it. I don't know how much more I'm going to play of it, but there's just so many games coming out right now that
so many.
I can't keep up. And of course, I'm doing my Final Fantasy X-2 playthrough now. I just started that after I beat Majora's Mask. That's my personal project, so it's like I have very limited time, especially when you combine the fact that I have some review games that I'm checking out currently as well, on top of the review games we already talked about this episode. I've been very busy in my gaming life.
What made you jump to 10-2?
Because I've never played it.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
So I did last episode, it was all about Majora's Mask. That's because I finally played that one. Ocarina of Time's my second favorite game of all time, so I wanted to play the sequel to that. Same thing with Final Fantasy X. It's my third favorite game of all time, so I'm playing the sequel to that. And then Tears of the Kingdom is going to come out in May, and I'm going to play the sequel to my favorite game of all time. So that's kind of like
then you won't play another game the rest of the year because it'll just be Tears of the Kingdom.
I know. I don't know. I got through Breath of the Wild in like I think 2 weeks when I played it the first time.
Did you review it for here? I don't remember.
No, Kyle reviewed it for us, and
okay.
Yeah, I'm very much clearing my schedule for Tears of the Kingdom, but I don't think I'm going to need more than a few weeks for that, honestly. Like, just because I'm going to hit it so intensely.
Yeah. And
then I'm going to be like, all right, on to the June releases because there's a ton of them.
Yeah, Diablo, Final Fantasy.
Street Fighter.
Yeah, goodness gracious. This 2023 is going to go down. If these games come out and they're great, 2023 is going to be one of the greatest year in video games.
We don't even know what the holiday season looks like.
I know, other than Spider-Man, which is like amazing already.
Mm-hmm. And then the last game I wanted to chat about was Kaiju Wars. And this is one that I probably put the least amount of time in out of all these games that we're talking about. This came out in late December, and I tried to check it out at the end of the year, but it just, I just didn't have time. And it's a turn-based strategy game where you're defending your city against various monsters with different abilities. And it's fun, and it's a unique strategy game. The studio says the campaign lasts about 15 hours. And I think the best comparison I can come up with is Into the Breach, which is a pretty high bar to set because that's a very, very good game. But like that game, I would say it's about as much of a puzzle as it is a strategy game.
Okay.
Where all right, the enemy is, or the monster is going towards the city or the towns that you have in like near the city. And it could go either for one or the other. Like we need to try to position our planes, our attack planes in the path, because if he tries to attack, we can intercept his attack and it won't attack the town. And then like you're building bases to try to spawn enough spawn enough units to take on the monster, and then you have to deal damage while also figuring out the best way to protect like your bases and the civilian towns and everything. And it's a fun time. The aesthetic, I don't know if I'm really sold on the aesthetic quite yet. It feels a little like retro neon style, but like kind of like maybe cyberpunk aesthetic as well a little bit. But maybe it's just early on. It feels that way. It didn't really match like what I was expecting in terms of the aesthetic, but overall,
oh yeah, this is interesting. Not what I expected based on what you were talking about.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting, I don't really know what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Maybe more XCOM and less Into the Breach in terms of like its style.
For some reason I was expecting like action figure-esque, maybe closer to like Advance Wars.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But yeah, this definitely looks it's almost like an arcadey looking type of thing. Yeah,
but it's kind of like 80s style, right?
Yeah,
like in terms of like the aesthetic. But yeah, that's Kaiju Wars. It came out I think December 20th on Switch, and I had a good time with what I played, and it's just a matter of I wanted to check it out because the premise immediately grabbed me, and I think Into the Breach is a very good strategy game, and I'm glad this game exists because it seems to carry on the spirit of that game. But it's also very challenging to recommend over Into the Breach because Into the Breach is so good, and that is on Switch. But yeah, Wes, I think that's an episode. I know we ran down a ton of games on this show. But yeah, I think we got a pretty busy show next week with Pokemon Day. So I'm looking forward to running down all that news with maybe you, maybe somebody else. We'll see what happens. But thanks so much for joining me.
Anytime. Had a blast.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit the subscribe button. And if you want to get any questions or comments in, you can get in touch with me at allthingsnintendo@GameInformer.com or hit me up on Instagram at Brian P. Shea. And as always, you can join the Game Informer community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to our Twitch channel. Wes, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at LeBlancWest. You can find me writing all over GameInformer.com, and you can find me doing some new gameplay today videos on the Game Informer YouTube channel.
And you can find him enjoying the warm weather in Florida while everybody in Minnesota is buried under 20 inches of snow.
Yeah, literally the high is 88 today, so
I hate you. That's our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time.